So welcome back to the next episode. This is Tell Me Something I Don't Know. I'm Jess, this is Craig.
Hi.
The idea of this section and segment is, well, I sit down all nice and relaxed, which is how Craig makes me feel. I've known Craig now for, is it 10 years?
Yeah, 10 years.
It's a decade, yeah. Might be a little bit more. He's lettings director, so looks after all four of the landlords' properties, including mine. And when we first met, I had a disaster of a property portfolio, fair to say?
Yes.
I thought I knew what I was doing, like lots of landlords do, and in reality I didn't. Easy to see, spot in hindsight, you can see all the issues and the problems that I was going through, and Craig came in as the expert and sorted things out, because it's not as easy as it looks. So if you are a landlord already, or you want to be, listen up. This is where Craig tells me something that I didn't know, and we're going to go through different scenarios. It's so complicated, he's brought his laptop.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of information.
We picked a topic at a time. What are we going to talk about today then?
So one of the questions that we still get asked quite a lot is the changes regarding the Deregulation Act.
It's exciting stuff.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
But it's really, really important you get this right.
It is, because it's still, well, it surprises me still that a lot of landlords still don't know what it is and what you need to do. So quite a few landlords are still falling short on it, which is going to cause you quite substantial problems if you ever wanted to evict your tenant.
May I interject?
Yep.
I'm going to put it from a landlord's perspective. You are spending time, effort, and putting your own capital at risk, building a buy-to-let business. And for me, now I understand what this is, what the problems this can bring. You're putting all of that potentially at risk. You're building a property empire. You're not a straw man anymore. You are somebody with some assets. If somebody wants to go after you, they're there in plain view, plain sight. And that portfolio, however it may get me, one or two properties, 5, 10, 15, 500 properties. If you don't get this right, everything you own is at risk. So it might not be the most scintillating of topics, apologies.
No.
But
it's vital.
Bloody listen up.
Yeah, it's vital that you know. So, I mean, this legislation came in 2015, so we're talking, quite a few years ago now. But like I said, we still get questions daily. What is it? Why do I have to do that? So basically, the government brought this new legislation in because there's just more and more people moving into rented accommodation, and effectively, it's more protection for tenants. So this change in legislation protects the tenant rather than you as the landlord. So, for example, it includes things, new legislation on EPCs, tenancy deposit protection, prescribed information, Section 21s, evictions. So it's quite a chunky piece of legislation that all landlords basically have to comply to. Do you want me to run through each one briefly?
High level bullet points.
Yeah.
Essentially, this is a package of paper. That's the way I look at it. That needs to accompany every new tenancy, and I know we also keep it up to date throughout tenancies as well, don't we?
Yeah, constantly updated. Yeah.
So run through.
So I'll start with deposits being the most simple one. So deposit protection was introduced basically to protect tenants' deposits. It was recognised that deposits kind of were taken, not protected, spent without tenants knowing. So you've probably heard of the most commonly used DPS, TDS. Yep. So basically, it was brought in that all deposits had to be protected under a government scheme, and also following that, the other change of it can't exceed 5 weeks rent. So again, that's something that landlords still don't know today.
Yeah. We regularly get out landlords saying, yes, but I'll accept this tenant, but can they give me more deposit?
Yeah.
No, legally they just can't. No.
And what this act does as well, it now covers virtually all AST agreements. So if, for example, you had a tenancy prior to 2015, you still have to protect the deposit.
Yep.
Just because the tenancy started before this act came in, doesn't matter. You still have to protect it. And if at that time you did take a higher deposit above 5 weeks, you have to give the difference back.
Give it back.
You just have to give it back. So that's one of the things that kind of we get asked quite a lot.
We're through that section of tenancies, because there was a period where We had people that had to start giving bits of deposits back or signing new tenancy agreements. A new tenancy agreement, you have to start all this thing again and reserve everything.
Yep, everything has to be reserved every single time.
So if you go from, go on, let me get my terminology right, pick me up on if I get it wrong. If it goes from contractual to periodic, then you've got to reserve all this thing again?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So how it's written is, I mean, this is the next section. So basically, landlords have to now provide tenants with all information about their rights and responsibilities as a tenant. And what that basically means is, for example, you have to provide them with a how to rent guide, for example, that's constantly updated.
Current version.
The current version. So you have to keep checking via the Gov website that you're using the correct version. And it basically tells the tenant everything that they need to know about their rights as a tenant. Just going back to what Jess mentioned, so if you have a fixed term tenancy that's gone on to statutory periodic, it's a change of tenancy. So you have to reserve all those documents. You have to give them the how to rent guide, the EPC, the gas. You literally have to do the whole thing over again. Now this is quite a grey area because a statutory periodic tenancy is written in law that a new tenancy is created every month. So do you have to reserve every month?
Probably, yes. The answer to that, and this is something that landlords get wrapped around their neck often, and I think it's majority southern-based landlords. There are cases where letting agencies will sting you for a renewal. You know, once a year they'll do a renewal, and they charge a fortune for it. So as soon as landlords hear the word, we're going to do a renewal, they think, oh, it's just a money-making exercise. We always now renew tenancies every year so that you start from scratch with the paperwork, you make sure you've got the right stuff, and we don't sting you again. There's a small admin fee. It's not like we're charging the entire thing again, which is what some of the sort of London-based agencies do. But yeah, I know that some landlords go, I don't want that. You must have that. I heard the other day, this is my clever little bit, that statutory periodic, so you basically get a new tenancy agreement every single month if you leave it rolling, and lots of landlords say, I'll just leave it rolling. So that's a new tenancy agreement every single month. Did you know that, I know you know, because he knows, landlords are then liable for the council tax. If the tenancy is less than a month, basically it's a short-term let, isn't it? It's like a holiday let. Then the council can go after you for the council tax. Now, not a lot of councils know that, but there are 5 in the country that do. One of them's Birmingham, Wolverhampton, there's one up north. Now, councils talk, they get together, and how long till that spreads? So the change is to go to this is where my knowledge runs out. Yeah, you go to a contractual period. Yeah. Anyway, we're probably about to lose people here. The point is, and this is why, because there will definitely be some people watching this going, sounds like a lot of work. Do I really need to do it? Like, why do I need to do it? I know this stuff that you're saying is the law to do. What are the consequences of not doing it? And
you can't evict your tenant.
The really simple thing is you can't evict your tenant. We do it because we advertise for it. We put an advert out into the big wide world, something like, and maybe you've seen one, or maybe you responded to one, maybe you're watching this video because of one. Are you a landlord with a tenant with arrears, a tenant that's called in the environmental health officer because you've got black mould, very topical at the moment, and you don't know how to evict, or and you can't. So we get these landlords coming in, they can't evict. They cannot get the tenant out because they've done something wrong with this paperwork that Craig's talking about now, and it becomes a nightmare, an absolute nightmare. Yeah. You've got to give them the rent back. There's possibility of rent repayment orders. There's possibility of compensation. You've got to then give them their deposit back and their rent back and reserve all the paperwork, tying them into another AST, and then you've got to get in and do the work.
It's endless, but ultimately it traps you as a landlord into technically not being able to evict your tenant, whatever the reason. Doesn't matter if they haven't paid rent for 6 months. The legislation doesn't take into account any of that. Yep. It's you haven't done what you should have done.
You get into a real catch-22 situation where you can't see the wood for the trees. Yeah. I've had some landlords in, well, I'll just sell it. You can't even sell it. There's a charge put on the property by the council. You can't even sell the house. So. Don't get in this situation. Carry on listening. Yeah.
So you have to make sure that you do supply all the relevant paperwork prior to the tenancy starting, and you have to have proof. So it's okay issuing the documents, but you have to get the tenant to sign to say they received it, which is what we do on every single tenancy. We use DocuSign, so again, it's confirmed, there's an audit trail, everything is there. But ultimately, if you don't give the tenant a how to rent guide, an EPC, a gas certificate, for example, before their tenancy starts, you cannot get possession of a property back. So it's really important that if you're not aware of the Deregulation Act, that you do look it up and read it, because there's other changes as well. You know, there isn't just that. Section 21s, it abolished, there were originally 2 Section 21s, one for fixed term, one for periodic. It basically brought those 2 together. So now there is one Section 21. It abolished the periodic rules, you know, serving notices in line with rent periods. So there is a lot of information on there that you need to check, again, before you're thinking of serving notice. Because if you serve the wrong notice, it's a complete waste of time. You have to reserve it again.
Lots of times.
Which happens a lot. It happens a lot. Also, Section 21s now can't be served during the first 4 months of the tenancy. So, crikey, I mean, going back now to the 90s, you used to have to serve a Section 20 with every AST so you could get possession. It's just changed so much. Now there is a block. You cannot serve a Section 21 within the first 4 months of the tenancy. So technically you can serve it for 2 months for the last 2 months of the tenancy. If you serve it before, it's void. It would be a complete waste of time. There's also rules now on evictions. So if, for example, a tenant is reporting maintenance non-stop and you've just had enough and you just want them out, technically now you can't do that. If the tenant can prove that you're retaliating, is a term I hear quite a lot, again, it could be blocked. So it is...
An open case of maintenance not attended to would be...
Well, even with maintenance, if the tenant can prove there's outstanding maintenance, you can't serve notice. You just can't. I mean, you can do it in theory, but it won't go anywhere.
That's the thing to note. You can do any of this stuff.
Yeah.
It's just when you get to the court where the judge is sat there saying, do you get possession or not? The answer's always no.
Yeah. I mean, if the tenant put in writing a complaint regarding repairs, technically it would void the Section 21. So you do have to just be really careful. So it isn't any longer, you know, just quickly filling out a piece of paper. It is a very complex process. And personally, I wouldn't recommend that any landlord does this themselves if they are unsure about anything. Because when I have come across situations like that, it's just resulted, when it's gone to court, if it goes that far, just being voided, and then you're back to square one. So it's vital that you do get, you know, the correct advice before you go ahead with anything.
It's not as easy as it looks.
No, it's not.
I think lots of landlords think that letting agencies, they've got one job here. Rent a house out, collect the rent. You know?
Yeah.
It's easy.
Yeah.
It's not easy.
It's not easy at all. And another thing to bear in mind as well, you know, these changes have imposed, you know, quite heavy fines and penalties for landlords that don't comply. So it's not just never being able to get possession or having problems with possession. You could be fined, you know, a substantial amount if you don't comply with the legislation, and particularly if a tenant complains. So you do have to be very careful, which is why that, you know, year on year there's an increasing benefit of opting for agents to manage your property, because agents should know about this and should be able to guide you.
I would say, so I know that you can walk into WH Smith's. I did it 4 or 5 weeks ago just to check they still did it. There's a little Twizzly stand, you know, where you normally keep postcards, that kind of Twizzly stand, and on it is contractual documentation, and you can still buy all of the stuff to rent out your house yourself, and, you know, do it on open rent and all those things. It's just not as easy as that. I think it's almost criminal that there are rules that want to become in play. You know, the potential rules or what the proposed rules to stop that. You know, to be a license, to be a landlord, you would have to have a license. Now, do we need to go that far? I don't know, but certainly as a landlord myself, and I'm not stupid. I'm not the smartest, but I'm not stupid. And I thought I could do all this stuff myself. It's just an absolute minefield. Being completely straight with you, I mean, Craig knows his stuff, obviously, and the team here do as well. But there are so many rules and so many changes that happen to the rules. We can't really keep track. We need a big bit of software to keep track. There's a group of barristers we pay as a group of letting agencies all pay barristers to come up with the paperwork, test case law, feed it back into the paperwork, all sorts of things. But we come into work in the morning, and like an iPhone where you've got like a little circle how many messages or notifications you got, our software will say that there's 7 things that need to be sent out to 7 different groups of tenants today, because you can kind of work out, Craig can work out why it needs to go out, but would we have spotted that ourselves without having all of that input? Because there's 2 or 3 a week, 2 or 3 a month, maybe not 2 or 3 a week, but 2 or 3 a month for sure. It's really, really hard work. So
I mean, there is some positives as well. So
absolutely.
For example, I've been doing this a long time. I've seen landlords who self-manage. When there were 2 Section 21s, they've served the wrong Section 21, for example. So the positives is because there's now 1 Section 21, technically you can't go wrong. You still have to complete it correctly, of course.
Yeah.
But there's
wrong either side.
There's no confusion in terms of which one you use, which one you don't use.
I've heard the conversation in this office when it first happened. What's midnight? Is midnight that day or that day?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you add a couple of days on? Do you not?
Do you not? And they didn't know. Nobody knew the answer. It's like, we're waiting for case law and all those kind of things.
But it also ends the confusion as well with deposits. So again, prior to 2015. Do you have to register? Don't you have to register? It's kind of removed all that as well. So effectively, a few things it has made more simpler, and it just operates best practice as well for everybody. So it's very clear when you read it exactly what you have to do, but you can't skip. You have to follow every single line.
Absolutely. If we're going to wrap it up, then, from my point of view, doing a good job at renting out properties, being a good landlord, getting everything, it's essential. You have to do it, otherwise you're putting everything you've built at risk. Craig, you might have lost you halfway through that. That's probably kind of the point, That's kind of the point. You're not going to be interested, you're not going to know all the detail. It's a specialist job that you probably don't want to learn. Be really, really clear that a good letting agent, forthelandlords.com, would love to manage your properties, get in touch, etc., etc. There'll be a link in the description, all that kind of stuff. But a good letting agent should never have any of these problems. Around the edges, maybe there's 1 or 2 little discussions about this and that, but it's not a whole, out of 100 points, we'd expect half of something to be a little bit of a, was that right, do we need to tidy up on that? Running it very, very tightly, and good letting agents can do that. And long term, from a landlord's point of view, this is the reason that rents go up. All this extra legislation, increasing the quality of properties out there, is the reason that rents go up. I mean, we have seen rent rises over the last couple of years, but definitely over the last decade as well. Something that I hear often, and it's bollocks, is, but the landlords that just carry on, they just fly under the radar, they ignore all this. Now, there might be some of those, you might know some of those, but I can tell you for an absolute fact, they're being caught up with. They will not be. They might be around for the next 5, 6, 7, 10 years, but they are gradually being caught up with. Yeah. And when it comes and finds them, they lose a lot. They lose an awful lot. You might have seen somebody sat around paying no attention to this for years, and think, if he can get away with it, I can get away with it. The knock on the door comes. It's a piece of software. IBM write it. I believe it's called Watson, and it basically just says, looks around the internet and all the records. Land registry, who owns it? You, the landlord. Who pays the council tax? A different name, probably rented. Does it need a license? Has it got a license? Yes or no? Very simple, 3 checks. Bang, the letter's produced. There's a list that goes to the council. They're knocking on the door of the tenant, saying, this should have a licence and it hasn't. Here's a leaflet on how to claim back every penny of rent from the day you moved in. Now that tenant might be your best mate, but if he just lost his job last week, guess what? He makes that phone call.
Yeah.
So,
it's just incredibly important. I mean, I've done this job for a long time, and any eviction that I've handled is under the umbrella of the company I've worked for. I've never lost. I've never had a case thrown out. Even here in 10 years, every single case that we've ever dealt with, and to be fair, there haven't been that many. We don't get a huge volumes, but every single one has gone through seamlessly. There's been no complication, and I guess all I say, if you are a landlord and you have any doubts about, just anything that we've discussed in this video, just please get in touch, because we are happy to help.
We run a free initial consultation where we'll go through any of the problems you got, and we'll put a link into the description there. Book onto that. It's a quick Zoom call where we'll capture some information, we'll take it away, we'll ask some more questions and do some research and come back to you with, yeah, this could be a problem, that's not such, that's fine, you don't need to worry about that, that's the action, that's the solution to that, and we'll sort of prescribe the solution to you. Anyway, we'll wrap it up. Thank you very much for watching. Hopefully that was useful. Bit of a different one today. We're going to start doing more of these kind of things. This is the reason that, I can say I'm a happy and successful landlord. If I didn't have this backup, I wouldn't be. It'd be chaos. I'd just own a load of houses that were a pain to look after and own. So anyway, cheers Craig, thanks so much, and thanks for watching. Bye for now.